This is Grapplers Talk.
What is up, fans of Grapplers Talk? This is Dave coming at you with another episode. Thank you to everyone for downloading the podcast, listening each and every week. We appreciate all the support we get from you. And just a couple quick announcements right now. Go on our Instagram page and vote for Guest of the Year. And we've narrowed it down to the top 3 downloaded podcasts. And episode 4 with Kalani Foster, episode 6 with Rich Flores, and last but not least, episode, I believe, 17 with Phil Bonkerong. And thank you guys for voting on there. We've had quite a bit of interaction on that. And the goal is to get the winner on a podcast towards the end of the year. So go out, make your voice be heard, go and vote for our Guest of the Year. And I'm really excited about this podcast. This is a very good one. And, you know, I think that sometimes things are just meant to be the way they happen. And I talked to this individual a couple weeks ago, and we had a nice conversation on the phone. And he stopped by my academy. And, you know, we kind of set it up and wanted to get him on the podcast. So from Stockton Jiu-Jitsu Academy, we have Edgar. Man, what is up, brother?
What's up? Thanks for inviting me out here.
Yeah.
I like what you've done with the place.
Yeah.
I've been here before, but never in this room.
Yeah. And Edgar has quite a bit of a martial arts background. He trains in multiple styles. And, you know, we have a connection through Aikito. And so I wanted to bring him on and just introduce him to everyone and kind of talk about his story about how he got introduced into Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu, and then go on from there. But how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome.
Good weather for a podcast.
Yeah.
It's raining while we do it.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about how you got introduced to Aikido.
You want to go Aikido first?
Yeah, let's go Aikido first.
All right. I guess you want the long story then.
We got time.
Now, well, see, I was one of those kids that I wasn't very physical active. I always had issues with my muscles getting sore. The lactic acid builds up real quick, and I got tired a lot. And so I wasn't all that thrilled about PE class, even in high school, you know. So if you told me 20 years ago I'd be doing martial arts and a black belt in anything, or even a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'd be like, nah, you're crazy.
Yeah.
And but eventually I wanted to try something, and I gravitated towards martial arts, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And of course, we wander around the internet to see what we like. I grew up in the 80s a bit, so I saw a lot of kung fu stuff and karate and things. And I stumbled upon it's kind of funny. I stumbled upon an old documentary about Steven Seagal's old Aikido.
Okay.
I think it was called The Path Beyond Thought.
Okay.
And,
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube.
Okay.
If you want, you can link it in the description.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, it's and I watched it, and I'm like, well, that looks really magical and cool. And, you know, I didn't know anything else. I thought that was Aikido. Mm-hmm. I thought all the Aikido was like that. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought the samurai pants were pretty rad, you know. Rich calls it my skirt.
Yeah, the skirt.
They're samurai pants, trust me. Anyway, he's throwing people around all magic-like, and I'm like, I want to do that. And so I looked up an Aikido dojo, and we were living in Manteca at the time, and I said, hey, this is in Manteca. And it turns out it was in Stockton. Mm-hmm. So I just kept coming, and I kept training here in Stockton at a new school Aikido at the time. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. It's not too bad. And then figured out the recovery wasn't too harsh or anything like that. And so I kept training, and then I kind of got hooked on it. And anything that I get into, I go 100%, you know, kind of like that.
Yeah.
And I kept training, and I trained for, a while before I realized, well, this is kind of different. This isn't like the Aikido I saw in the video, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then I realized there were different styles. And so instead of just kind of sticking with what was going on here, I went to different seminars, different styles. I even stumbled upon one of Steven Seagal's direct students.
Oh, wow.
And did some seminars with him, trained in the park with him whenever I could. We invited him over, any excuse to train with him, because I kind of liked how it looked, you know?
Yeah.
And so I had a variety of styles and teachers that taught me Aikido. So from the hard to the soft. And so I had a good background, and I trained hard. And after a few years, they started grooming me for my black belt, and I started teaching out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you have any friends doing Aikido with you, or anybody that you knew, or was it just completely new to you?
I didn't know anybody. Everyone that I knew doing Aikido, I met while doing it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it kind of led eventually to my path to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But I think I needed it. I needed it, kind of that buffer of martial arts, kind of in maybe some kind of soft style before moving on to somewhere where I'm being smashed by a 250-pound dude, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's quite a transition.
How did you discover jiu-jitsu during that?
I was towards the end of my black belt and before I got it, and then I discovered a video by Henry Gracie, you know, from down in Torrance.
Yeah.
And he explained the basics of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I always thought it was interesting because I'm like, we don't do any ground stuff. And so I watched it. He explained how jiu-jitsu worked, kind of the basic principles. I'm like, oh, I get that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I want to do that. But, I want to finish what I started out here doing Aikido. And so I'm like, maybe I can train on the side, you know?
Yeah.
And so maybe I can find some So I think there was like Craigslist still back then.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, do you want to train jiu-jitsu with me? And then a couple people actually answered it. And, they came out. We trained in the park. And then eventually I made friends with the head instructor, the tennis instructor over at University of Pacific.
Okay.
He's like, yeah, come on down. And we started kind of practicing what we saw in videos and things, just kind of brief introduction on the side.
Right.
I brought people over to the dojo. I got in trouble for getting the mat all sweaty and everything. Like, well, this is kind of cool. I'm learning this new stuff. And it eventually, I got my black belt, and then I'm like, oh, cool, I better find a school, but I want to. Everything I've been learning up to now, I see people sparring. I haven't done any sparring,
Yeah.
Just drilling techniques and trying to compare them to what I already know. And so I'm like, let me find a school, try out a class. And so I think it was a Cesar Gracie school in Manteca at the time. I don't know if it's still there.
Yeah, I think they're still around.
Yeah, and I popped in there. And
Darren Cooley, right?
I don't know if I think he was there. Yeah, actually, yeah. I don't think he was the instructor there when I dropped in for that class, but I got a new appreciation for new art. I think I almost threw up. I kept, yeah. So we did the whole drilling, and then it was warm-ups, drilling, and then by the end of the drills, I'm like tired, and it was, now we're gonna spar. I'm like, oh, okay, it's my first day, but okay. And so I kind of got the gist of it, a little bit, but not really much. And some 4-stripe white belts took me to town, and and then I was sitting there like trying to breathe by the end of it, and someone was like, you just got to keep coming back. It gets easier. I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
And then I barely made it home, and I kept everything down. But that was my introduction to sparring.
Yeah.
And then finally, after I graduated, I got my Shodan in the Aikido at the Aikido dojo. And then I'm like, all right, now let me see if I can add a new skill set. So I took off my black belt, put on a white belt looking for a gym, I got the gi and everything beforehand.
Yeah. And
I dropped in over at Ronin here in Stockton for an open mat, I think it was.
Okay.
And then we didn't do an open mat. We just kind of drilled some stuff, and Ernest Mello was there.
Yeah.
And so I got to meet him, and they had this like upstairs, the mat was upstairs, and so it was like boiling hot up there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay. And then I started looking at different schools, and then I was asking questions to different people. And then I said, okay, first one to get back to me, I asked Ernest about their program, and I asked Rich Flores over at Stockton Jiu-Jitsu. And I said, okay, let's see who gets back to me. I never heard back from Ernest.
Yeah.
And so I did the same thing over at Rich Flores' place. I still remember everything we did, and ended up signing up after that. And
nice.
I was I'm in my 7th year now.
Wow, that's wonderful, man. And Rich, obviously, he has a awesome academy, man. And the biggest thing I take away from it when I go in there is everyone's very welcoming. You guys have a family atmosphere.
Yeah, when I did my first class, I was signing up. There's kids running around everywhere. I'm like, what's this? What's going on here? And,
everyone's happy.
But yeah, everyone's running. Yeah, there's lots of kids all ages, and
right.
But I'm like, yeah, let's do this. I'll try this, see how far I can go, and I kept going.
Yeah, and so Edgar, let's talk about your unique situation here. So You train and you can't see what's going on, right? Currently, like with all the moves and stuff, right?
No, actually, when I started training Aikido, I could see, you wouldn't know any different that I had any eye issues. I just might run into stuff here and there. But eventually I did become legally blind due to retinal eye disease. It's degenerative.
Oh, wow.
And looking back now to the vision I had when I became legally blind, I'd feel like Superman if I had that vision now because it's degenerated so far that all I can see is light and shadow.
Yeah.
And like I can't see your face.
Yeah.
I can't see anybody's faces anymore. And it looks like you're looking through foggy glasses. Like you get out of the shower, you put glasses on. That's kind of how I see.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm blind. I'm legally very much blind. I'm grateful for what I can see, but it is degenerative. So it's a constant adjustment. So you have to go through the process every time I wake up. I'm like, oh well, that's gone now, and it's never coming back.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
How did you like realize that you were starting to lose your vision?
I was at a Mexican restaurant, and I always had kind of poor vision, and I couldn't see well in dim lighting. And I was at a Mexican restaurant with my wife, and then I bumped into a dude at the salsa bar, and he didn't like that.
Yeah.
He's like, "Hey man, what are you trying to do?" I'm like, "Sorry, bro, I'm blind." I didn't say it like that. That would have been like begging for a fight, And my wife was there. He's like, "Yeah, he can't see," and he looked at me. He looked at my wife, trying to figure out if we were serious, And I didn't have a cane at the time or anything like that because I got by.
Yeah.
And he's like, you serious? Yeah, but he was puffing up by that time.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, oh, sorry. And so we talked with my wife. I'm like, well, I think it's getting to the point where I need at least something to identify myself. And then I got a cane, and that was difficult for me, just kind of hurt my pride to have to carry that thing around. And I used it. It was kind of handy, but for the most part, I used it as an identifier. Yeah. And then shortly thereafter, I got diagnosed as legally blind. And that's about when I started over at Rich's place. And I wandered in with my stick there. Yeah.
Was it like a huge adjustment? Like obviously it has to be in life, right? From going from being able to see to now, okay, my vision's getting worse and worse and worse. How much of adjustment was that for your psyche, for your soul and everything? Like I'm sure you get down sometimes over that. Like,
some people ask the question: is it better that you were born blind or you see and then you lose it at some point in life?
Yeah.
Right. So if you're born blind, you kind of get to know you don't know any different.
Right.
So you don't have that contrast to seem that you lost anything.
Yeah.
Once you've had it and then you lose it, something as valuable as your eyesight.
Right.
Yes, and because I continue to lose a little bit every month or two, it's a constant adjustment. It's a constant. I just got to adapt to it, so I can do a little less now. Well, I can't do that now.
Yeah.
And then I have to adjust to it. So they say like if somebody loses a limb or any ability, they go through a mourning process, sure.
Right.
And then as a man, it's like, well, you want to do more for people, but there's certain things that you can't do as much, you know. We can do lots of stuff, but I certainly can't drive.
Oh yeah.
Can't drive, and I was a veterinary technician for a long time.
Okay.
Can't do that anymore. And so it is, and people go through the process of mourning for every time they lose whether it's a limb or a sight or your hearing. Yeah, you lose a part of yourself. So it's difficult, but interesting the timing when I started doing jiu-jitsu, because you learn to be uncomfortable physically.
Right. Comfortable with the uncomfortable, right?
You learn to be comfortable. I don't know about comfortable with it, but you learn to deal with it.
Right.
And that's a big part of it. And it's interesting that mode, that process of learning came at about that time, because I remember I told myself, okay, I'll tap to pressure as long as I'm a white belt. I'll try not to. But when I get my blue belt, I'm not allowed to tap to pressure anymore. That's just kind of my own rule. I may have once or twice, but maybe I got a cramp or something. Who knows? That was the rule I kind of gave myself. And while there's a big guy on top of you smashing you, putting his chest in your face. Yeah. That's Rich's favorite move on people. Try to make him suffer,
Oh yeah.
And then you realize I'm very uncomfortable. I feel like I can't breathe. And then you realize, but I'm all right.
Yeah.
I'm all right. And when the pressure in real life comes along, you lose a spouse, you lose a family member, you lose your job. You lose your eyesight, anything. That's pressure,
right?
And you can you have the luxury of tapping out when you're rolling because it's a training process. If 100%. You see it that way, But you don't have that luxury when life brings these real problems your way,
right?
But then you can. The way I've learned to process is I'm uncomfortable. This is difficult, but I'm all right.
Yeah,
I can breathe. And so that's kind of why jiu-jitsu's kind of been integral in my later life.
Yeah.
When I explain it like that, yeah.
I always say that jiu-jitsu teaches you things about life that you never thought you needed, right? And it challenges you to learn more and to be comfortable with those uncomfortable situations, or at least a little bit more understanding of them. And there's a lot of things that people take for granted, and things can be worse. We're here breathing, we're here talking, we're here having a good time, but things could definitely be a lot worse for the both of us. And I feel like jiu-jitsu has kind of opened my eyes to that and helped me understand that no matter what, things can get worse, right? And it's how you adapt to each situation in life, not just jiu-jitsu on the mats, but in life in general. Can really define who you are.
Yeah, and a lot of times you look at people and you can learn from people when you see them at a point in their life where they're not ready for the difficulty that comes in their life and they kind of cave under the pressure. Mm-hmm. And I think I look at those incidences as, they're not at the point where they can learn to deal with it. You could judge people you could call them weak or whatever, but they just haven't gone through the fire yet.
Yeah.
That refining process that makes you stronger. And a lot of those principles in Aikito too, but in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're confronted with it in real life.
Yeah.
And you got to learn and you got to adjust and you got to grow.
Yeah.
It's like when you're training and you do all the same moves because they're working, right? But then everyone at the gym gets wise to you.
Yeah,
they get the wise. I know what you do. Yeah. I know what you're going to do, right? And then you're forced to do what? You either adapt or you're going to just get passed by and rolled over by everybody. Can't depend on just, the new people coming in and feeling like you accomplished anything, right?
Right.
So you got to learn. And now what? Now you're uncomfortable. Well, I don't really practice this. I haven't drilled this enough. This position's not usually what I go to,
Yeah.
We all have kind of that go-to position we work at the time. And so you got to work something new, right? And it just translates the same to life, Okay, your life is cruising. You want it to be better, but what are you going to do about it? You got to try something new.
Yeah.
You got to do something different attitude, different thoughts. That's a big one.
Right.
People need to develop the right way of thinking because they get stuck in the same way of thinking and they're just going nowhere. And so if you want to grow, if you want to be more than you are now, you're going to have to learn some new way of doing things, and it's going to be a learning process. And Jordan Peterson says that if you want to be a master, you have to be content with being a fool for a while.
Yes, very true.
And then forget it and learn something else over and over,
Yeah.
So it's a constant, if you do it right, it's a constant struggle, but there's no growth without that.
Right. And that's important, man. The growth, it's got to, you go through growing pains, right? As a kid, I used to get these pains in my legs all the time, and I don't know what it was. My parents always said they were growing pains.
You're growing,
you're getting taller, but I remember the pains in my legs were so bad at times. I'd be sitting there crying, telling my parents, hey, my legs hurt, and they'd have to carry me out of my room or something, but I had to go through that to
Those are
to
literal
get bigger.
growing pains.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's very interesting. Now, a lot of people, you hear these stories and things like that. Like if you lose one of your senses, that other ones get heightened from it. Have you noticed anything like that? Maybe your listening or your physical abilities at all?
Yeah, people say that, and there may be some truth to it because maybe your hearing is being used more often, and so the brain is rather there's that brain plasticity. So we're doing this more, so the brain builds up more connections with this sense or something like that.
Right.
But I think it's more of a case. Well, you can't see, so now you're paying attention to the hearing more.
Yeah. You're
So
focusing.
I think that's more the case because that's all you have,
Yeah.
and so you're paying attention. You're using your hearing more, just like I talked about when you're drilling. You know those triangles, but you
Yeah.
never use them, and then you're like, oh, and then you're forced to whatever train a different way, and you're like, well, let me practice these triangles, and then you're paying attention to the triangles.
Right.
Yeah, and so I mean, people say I have good hearing, and then they attribute it to my superpower after going blind.
Now-
The biggest superpower I get after losing my vision is being able to quickly identify the kindest people in the room,
Yeah.
which is pretty wild because not only did I gain a new perspective as being blind, legally blind, very much blind, but I gained a new perspective on who people were a lot. And a lot of times people are kind and nice and they just don't know what to do,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to be an advocate for yourself. But those people that are just naturally just kind and
Yeah.
want good people,
Mm-hmm.
that we can sniff those out real quick. So that's an interesting superpower too.
Yeah, that's an important one too. Like, and something most people take for granted. Like we just look at people and, you don't know a certain person very well, but like if you can really pick up, like, man, this person's got a good heart, I can tell. You're really going to be able to identify the circle you want around you. And that's probably why you ended up at Stockton Jiu-Jitsu, because they're a great team of people. Rich and his family, I've never joined Stockton Jiu-Jitsu or anything, but I've always been welcome there every single time and treated great every time. Everyone introduces themselves and
Yeah, everyone's
and
great.
Yeah, it's I've gone into other gyms and people are eyeing you up to fuck you up, and
Who's this guy? I'm gonna mess him up.
yeah, so
A little different if I walk in.
Yeah.
I sometimes I have to tell people, don't be nice to me.
Yeah.
So I'll walk in, I could tell they're handling me with kids' gloves.
Yeah, you notice that? You notice people do
Sometimes,
that?
yeah. Well, you gain a lot of things that you notice. Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes people don't know what to do with you.
Yeah.
I'll go to restaurants and they'll go, oh, okay, and then they'll ask my wife what I want to eat. Yeah, one time I was there and she said, oh, what does he want? She's like, I don't know, ask him.
Yeah.
And then I did my order, and then she turned back to her, what kind of dressing does he want? Well, I don't blame people. I'm not
Yeah.
complaining.
Yeah.
I only talked about the kind of downsides because you asked about it.
Yeah.
And it's a different perspective.
Absolutely.
I'm generally pretty positive. I don't complain about it.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm at the point where I was like, hey, you're blind now, and I'm not breaking down every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
Just
the other
adjusting,
thing I've
you know.
noticed about you is like you've always had a great perspective on everything. Like I remember a few years ago, and I don't know if you even remember this, but I want to say it was like 2020, 2021 maybe. And I went into Stockton Jiu-Jitsu and we had a nice little conversation, and you told me the same thing. Hey, when you roll with me, don't go easy. Like, let's go. Let's have some fun with it. And
Yeah, that might be right. I
Yeah.
probably could see your face at the time. Yeah, now one of the adjustments I want on the mat is I can't really, like an open mat or something like that, I can't really walk around the mat and say, hey, let's roll.
Yeah.
And so we just got in the routine. I just kind of sit there and see who comes up to me.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of cool because I get a variety of people. I get white belts, purple belts, blue belts, and brown and black belts. They all come up to me.
Yeah.
And now there's that psychology when somebody sits there and you size them up, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's say, what's he got? He's got a blue belt. Okay, he's about my size. Okay. Now I'm going at it. I don't know who's coming at me unless they tell me their name. Identify yourself.
Yeah.
And then I don't ask their rank or anything
Yeah.
like that. But sometimes if I'm not sure who they are, I'll say, how long you been training?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be a jerk to new people.
Yeah. No. So, interesting question is, I've seen you at seminars and things like that, and I've obviously with jiu-jitsu, most instructors usually show a variation of different moves.
Yeah. I used to be able to watch them and copy it.
Yeah. How do you pick up some of the different techniques nowadays with your site being what it is?
I think it's been helpful that I had like some previous training before I started losing my vision. This is pretty new. It's 2024, 25,
Yeah.
and I got legally blind when I was 38. So that's like 2018.
Okay.
So this is all very new, especially the degree to which it is right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was the?
Just how you pick up on techniques and
how I
different
pick up,
things.
yeah, right, because I can't see with the demonstrations anymore. So a lot of times I'll try to get with like a blue belt or somebody who's done the technique before and like show me a couple times what we're doing, and then I'll have them go first instead of me if I'm higher ranked,
Yeah.
And then okay, I get it, and then so I go from there, and then I'll say, hey, Rich, am I doing this right? And then he'll tell me yes or no, and then repetition from there.
Yeah.
Luckily, I use the background of what I already know, and I kind of can hear, and I get kind of the terminology,
Right.
So I know how to move and things like that. But learning something new is always just like with anybody else. Drill it till you get it.
Yeah.
Until you don't think about it.
Yeah.
So just one step behind.
Yeah.
But I just get there in the end.
Well, you hear, I was talking to somebody like a couple nights ago, and they were saying, yeah, when I first started jiu-jitsu, I used to close my eyes all the time. And I've seen it from,
like a habit?
as a habit. And, you learn a lot of feeling. And I remember when I first started, even it was like a few months, I would close my eyes right away. And I don't know what causes that or the psychology behind it or anything like that, but it is an interesting approach when you think about it.
Yeah, of course you can open them whenever you want.
Right.
The difficulty with me is anybody who wants to could sneak around me if they don't make contact.
Right.
And one of the main things I kind of took away from Aikido as an automatic habit is I make a connection as quick as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And not just a loose connection, but I connect to the point where I feel like the other person is an extension of my own body.
Right.
And so when you make a connection like that, you can tell when somebody raises their hand up. You can tell when somebody's getting ready to move their weight to the other side.
Yeah.
And that connection that I learned during Aikido training, people might laugh at it, but there's principles that are very much the same and were quite useful.
Mm-hmm.
Just the same with feeling people's energy and blending with it.
Right.
It helps you get to the point where you can, if they push, you pull.
Yeah.
If they pull, you're going to push. Why? You're going to try to upset their balance, their kazushi, their balance to the point where you can execute a throw, a takedown, or what's been useful for me is just being able to have that connection and feel the energy blend with my own and take advantage of it, redirect it. So it's been most handy when trying to sweep somebody.
Yeah.
And you push, they pull, and then you take them the other way,
Right.
that kind of thing. And those moments are very small, but I learned to create them.
Yeah.
Look for opportunities when they're available. They kind of pop up like a wormhole or something here and there, and but you recognize them, you can take advantage of it. So that's one of the big principles I took away from Aikido: the feel, the connection, and the blending of the other person's movements and being aware of it.
Yeah, that's very true, though. There's a lot of different things about jiu-jitsu. I have a friend, and he's been training for quite some time, and I'm like, hey, when you slap hands and bump fist and get ready to roll, like, what do you try to do? Like, what's your style of jiu-jitsu or what's your game? And he's like, oh, I just kind of go off of what they're giving me. And to an extent, that's okay, but like, you really have to establish your game. And like you said, you make a connection, right? So you know what's going on, and you can feel their energy and feel their direction and how they're kind of moving.
Yeah, if you get a sleeve grip, you don't need to see anything else from there.
Right.
If
you have control.
If you have no connection, they can rock right behind me if they're sneaky enough.
Right. Yeah. and it goes back. Jiu-jitsu is totally about control, right? Before you go for submissions, you have to control that partner in that position, and it's very important that
you got to get to that position first.
Yeah, you do. You got to get there, and then you got to control them, and control the situation. And with jiu-jitsu, there's so many different aspects I love about it, man. I've been training a long time, and I love, like, it's a new thing, and it's constantly making your mind work. And I've heard guys like Joe Rogan talk about it and stuff. They're like, you can't think about anything else while you're doing jiu-jitsu. Like, if your mind is somewhere else, you're gonna get fucked up.
Yeah, it's very mental, and that's probably one of the things that was attractive in it for me, because instead of like in traditional martial arts, you might drill or do kata and try to perfect your technique when you're on your own or with a partner like that. But when in jiu-jitsu, you'll actually have to make it work somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple other things, I know a while back you were on Instagram doing a lot of, I don't know what to call them, like little motivational things. You
saw
give those brief statements. Handsome blind guy.
Handsome
if you
blind
didn't
guy.
see him.
It's on my Instagram, yeah.
That's what I loved about it. And, you would kind of give little philosophy ideas and just brief little videos here and there. And how'd you get going with that?
Yeah, I guess that's part of the mental thing. I have to have something stimulating my brain. And like you were talking about in jiu-jitsu, you got to be thinking about problem solving on the fly, you know? And sometimes you get in a position you don't know, and then you really got to think about it. But that's part of it. If I learn something, I'm like, well, this is good. This helped me. So if I put it out there, maybe it'll help somebody else.
Right.
Yeah, it gives me something to do. So put them up on Instagram or YouTube.
Yeah.
And people liked it. I don't know how many people are watching it, but it's been fun putting it out there.
Yeah.
At least it's out there, and then someday when I'm gone, it might still be floating around on the internet, and my kids will look at it,
Yeah. No, you never know, man. And those types of things, like even this podcast, I never knew where it would take me. I still don't know where it's. I still don't know. It's
gonna blow up.
It was kind of cool today. Quentin Rampage Jackson, former UFC champion, was checking out our story on Guest of the Year, and I was like, wow, he's paying attention
because you can see who saw it.
Yeah. So I thought that one was a unique one. I didn't even know how he found out about it. I don't know who shared it to get to him or.
Yeah,
you didn't
know. I have a story like that. I put these videos out, you don't know who's looking, and sometimes you're like, no one's watching or listening. And then I got a comment on one of my videos because I put out I don't remember what it was, some positive message or exploring life after death or something like that. I don't know. And then it was a soldier that's in Ukraine right now. And he made a comment. He told me all about how they lost everything. Lost family, he lost his health, he's all messed up.
Yeah.
Injured during the war in Ukraine. And then I'm like, oh, this is going to be a bummer. And then he kept going on. He's like, videos like yours help me keep holding on, to some faith in something.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, that just blew me away. So my little short video I made in my bedroom, pointing my phone at myself and uploaded.
Yeah.
Had an influence on somebody over there in the Ukraine.
It's crazy,
who
right?
Lost everything.
Crazy.
So you never know. So I think I saved a screenshot of that, and every now and then I'll check it out. I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know where those things lead, man. And the biggest thing that people let fear hold them back when it comes to that kind of stuff. And if you can get over that, and you may change someone's life, and it may not be in your direct circle, it may be somebody in the Ukraine, right?
Especially if it's something you've never done before.
Yeah.
And so you got to understand you're going to suck at whatever you start doing at first.
Yeah.
It's going to be not as good as it will be, a year from the day you start.
Yeah.
And then 5 years from there, it's even better. You go back, watch your old stuff, and you might cringe at it,
Yeah.
but you had to go through that process. You had to play the fool before you're the master.
Right. Embrace the suck,
Yeah, you got to get through it. It's just like when you're a white belt, okay, you're going to get beat up for 2 years.
Yeah.
You're going to have lots of trouble, but even maybe after that time, you're kind of surviving a little longer, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then you see some progress.
Yeah.
You get addicted to that progress, and you can transfer that over to all the struggles in life in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I play guitar, and same thing. I was in a I wasn't a great guitar player the first 2 years I had it.
Yeah, I play too. So
Yeah.
you get the pain in your fingers for a while.
You got to build up those calluses, and
Gotta switch the chords right away.
Yep,
Yeah, it takes you a while to get proficient with it, but once you have it, you don't think about it anymore.
yeah. So you have a couple of interesting things I want to ask you about. We were talking on the way here about your pythons.
My pythons, my snakes. Yeah, I've been keeping snakes and reptiles for close to 25 years now.
Yeah.
And
How'd you get into that?
When I was a kid, I was always my family hired the migrant workers that work the agriculture fields around the county.
Okay.
And so I was a little kid, like before kindergarten, I was out running around the fields. And what's the little kid going to do? He's going to play in the ditches. He's going to catch frogs, crawdads, snakes, and tadpoles. That was all I did all day. And then one day, one of my aunts pulled up a snake and said, "Hey, look, a snake. I'm going to get the shovel and kill it. You watch it here." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to check it out." And I was a little nervous, it was hissing at me and stuff. And then
Was it a rattlesnake or?
I didn't know at the time, but I thought maybe I was safe.
Yeah.
I didn't see a rattle on it, so I built up some bravery. I picked it up, and I'm like, it's just crawling around through my hands. It's totally chill. And I looked back, and my aunt was getting the backhoe from the truck, and I looked back at the snake, and I kind of put it back in the grass and poked it in the tail so it would get away. And when she came back, she looked at me. I was just smiling, like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, you disappeared.
And since then, yeah. And then my family never liked snakes or anything like that. And so I didn't get to play with that stuff till after college. And then instead of 7 a.m. ancient Greek class in college, I ditch class and I go look for salamanders or something like that because it was still cold out,
Yeah.
And eventually I got, pet snake and went from there to the point where now I run a nonprofit conservation group for people that like reptiles and amphibians.
Oh, that's awesome.
But you can always bring it back to jiu-jitsu because the snakes, the pythons that I raise now, they got the best choke technique,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. I actually brought it up the other night when I was teaching. I said, just like a snake, you want to constrict it. You want to get everything a lot smaller, right? Take away the space.
Yeah, and that's funny you say that. The other day I had a snake I had to feed. Excuse me. And so I bumped into the microphone. I had a snake I had to feed, and so I had a rat thawing out, and I went to give it to it, and it took it and snatched it right away. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I was thinking, I think I fed the wrong one. I think I gave this one a rat like a couple days ago. I'm like, oh, no. And so I went down trying to take it away from it. Every time I pulled away, it filled the space. I pulled back again, and it squeezed even harder. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna blow that rat up. I guess I give up. But it turns out I gave it to the right snake. Well, part of keeping snakes while blind.
Yeah.
Some issues, but luckily I gave it to the right snake.
That's actually I never even thought about that. That's interesting, man. Have you seen those YouTube guys that they got these big old like king cobras and big large snakes everywhere?
I probably know a lot of them.
Yeah. There's a whole like little world of that.
It's all these subcultures of the reptile people.
Right.
Yeah. And I tried to bring it back to jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
but that's good technique like the anaconda choke, same thing. Wrap them up, roll.
Yeah.
And tighten it up.
Yeah, very cool, man. Like that's like I'm not a snake guy whatsoever. I'd probably, freak out if I saw a snake. But there's
like a lot of people,
There's a unique thing about the snake, like you said, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, like the amount of space you're taking away, and they're constantly taking away that space. And
you feel it when it's done on you for sure. Somebody knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm gonna make a space. No, they took it.
Oh,
now
yeah.
You have less space. Yeah.
Yep. The jiu-jitsu is a game of creating space, right? When you need to, when you're in defense, you got to create that space to either get your sweep, get out, get to a better position, and then when you're on top, you got to close that space. You know?
Lessons from nature for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Have you ever competed in jiu-jitsu at all?
I did a couple times as a white belt. The first time I got disqualified.
Okay. How did that go?
They say I slammed the guy. Well, who knows, No, what happened was he jumped on me. I'm like, I don't know this guy. And so I was training to break guard by standing up, and I ended up picking him up. And he was pretty heavy. He's as heavy as I was, And so I started going down to kind of put him down, go back to my knees, and the those 200 pounds came down
Yeah.
a lot harder than I expected. And so I got busted for that. And then I did it again. I did a little better. I lost on points, but nobody got me.
Yeah.
And I haven't since then. I kind of didn't want to get injured because I was, I'm 44. I'm all right, but I started having injuries in my shoulders and things. I didn't like. If I got hurt, then I couldn't train for a while, and I'd rather get hurt while drilling or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Injuries take so much time away from jiu-jitsu.
Well, you know that.
Yeah, I've experienced a lot of that, man, and especially shoulder injuries. Right. Shoulder controls so much of your body, and you don't even think how much your shoulder is actively moving in daily life, and it's constant. It's everything that you're doing, every twist, turn, your shoulder's involved in that.
In your 20s, you see the people with injuries. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm perfect. Nothing
Yeah.
can get me. And then you get a little older, and I'm like, oh, I got hurt.
Yeah.
And that's forever now.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a different thing, man.
Yeah.
When you get older, you start to think about, man, I don't want these chronic back problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They become permanent.
Yeah, they do, and they can take us away from the things that we love the most, right?
Yeah, I honestly wanted to keep training, so I never, maybe someday I'll get the bug and do something, but I've never gravitated towards it since then. Not for any other reason other than I want to keep training.
Yeah. And I think that like competition's different for everyone, right? Everyone does it for a different reason. Everyone looks at it differently. I think that if you do jiu-jitsu, you should compete at least once, to test it out, like see how your body reacts, see how your nerves react to that, right? Because if, God forbid, you ever did run into a situation on the streets where you had to use your jiu-jitsu, if you don't, if you can't control those nerves and control your thoughts and your process of everything, then you're going to be in a world of trouble.
Oh, sure. So that added mental pressure.
Yeah. And, you find out more about yourself, right? In those types of situations where you're testing yourself in competition.
Yeah. And it comes in small doses in jiu-jitsu, and you kind of build up to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, like I said, competition's not for everyone. So, if you're not competing, it's as long as you're training jiu-jitsu, right? Consistency is the key in this martial art. I don't know any other ones because I haven't trained them, but I assume it's the same thing.
That's a big one because when you're going to compete, you want to be training pretty often, pretty consistently.
Yeah.
And until I can get one of those robots that drives me to a rich's place every day,
Yeah.
I'll hold off on competing.
We're probably not that far away from it, huh?
What's fun is like just we're helping others,
Yeah.
helping others get ready for their competitions, and then going to do that. That's fun. Even you can still be useful in the gym to the competitors.
Yeah, absolutely. And they need those people too. They need people challenging them. They need training partners, different body types, different sizes, to really help them get ready for those competitions. So even if you're not competing, you're still in the competition mode, getting your guys ready, getting your teammates ready. You guys have a hell of a competitor at your gym with Mateus.
Mateus,
yeah, dude, that dude's an animal. And the
the
reason he's so good is because of the people around him, and you have to have those good training partners, those good roles in there to challenge you as a competitor to actually get to where you're at.
And he's there in the morning, he's there at night
Yep.
after working, and helps others too.
Man, he's a young man though. If I could train like that, man, my body just doesn't recover like that anymore. But yeah, he's a young man doing great.
Enjoy the Superman days.
Yeah. I didn't appreciate those enough when I was younger, getting into jiu-jitsu. I like having those superpowers of bouncing right back after an injury or
it makes me wish I started when I was in my 20s or something like that, and see what you could do, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully that doesn't discourage anyone from starting training if they start older.
Yeah.
We've got a guy at our gym. He started, I think he was 60 years old, and then he ended up winning worlds at some point.
Yeah. I know Grandpa Dan, he's over at Strive Jiu-Jitsu. I trained with him years ago, and he's well into his 70s and
still training.
He's won worlds a couple times in his 70s. And really remarkable person. And then there's people on Instagram. There's a Grappling Granny is what I think her Instagram handle is. But
is that a big big bracket in the 70s?
It can't be. Grandpa Dan, I remember he went up against the same people every year. And yeah, there was only a handful of people. Like I want to say like maybe 2 or 3 people total in the worlds. He would try to do local competitions, and he'd have to go up against young guys or things like that.
Yeah, we were seeing a coral belt in the competition. He must be good. No, even was it Helio Gracie?
Yeah,
kind of got all this going.
Yeah,
he was still at the academies and having guys mount him and seeing if he can escape. And he probably couldn't tap out people by when he died in his 90s or something like that. But if he can escape, he saw that as a win.
Yeah, I've seen those old YouTube clips to where he's rolling with his sons like Hickson and maybe Hoyler as well. And I'm a huge Gracie fan. I nerd out on the Gracie family. I've watched all the documentaries. I've read all the Wikipedias. I've researched them like a crazy person would. But yeah, it's remarkable how he was able to consistently like keep that training up. I mean, well into his 90s even.
Yeah,
still teaching.
His fights were pretty intense because they'd go on until somebody won or gave up. And when he was young, so he was known for doing something new, and they knew how to market it, and the Gracie story kind of is based on a lot of marketing, and when you got a good product, it catches on.
Yeah, his match with Kimura, he gained the respect of Kimura from.
He lost that match.
Yeah, he lost that match, but gained the respect.
And then we named the Kimura.
Yeah. It's amazing. That's one of my favorite submissions of all time. I've always loved the Kimura.
It's a good one, especially if you got short legs.
Yeah.
Not a triangle guy, you can go for Kimuras.
Right. But Helio Gracie, was able to stay consistent, for many years, and even the whole family. You look at Hickson, and he's now getting older, and he's developed Parkinson's disease and different things like that, and he's still training every single day. Still working, still doing privates, still doing the videos online.
It's a new adjustment. You lose the glory of when you're younger, just like with any struggle. With me, I lose a little bit of sight every now and then.
Right.
And I'm getting older, so I got to add piled up on me. So I'm gonna be a Superman. Maybe when I get older, it'll be so strong.
Yeah. As long as you stay with it, man, that's the goal. Like everyone has a different journey. No two journeys in jiu-jitsu are alike in any way.
Everybody's struggle is completely different. Yeah. Everybody has their own. So not too good on feeling sorry for myself ever. Just try to be positive and get through the times when it's hard, and keep training and learning lessons from everything jiu-jitsu, martial arts can bring.
Are you like in your Handsome Blind Guy videos? I remember didn't you learn philosophy or something in college or work?
Yeah, I took it in college, and then I went to the local college here at Delta, and I decided, let me do this. Let me try to do something at the college while my eyesight's going, like it still sees something,
Yeah.
And then in 2 years, I got like 4 degrees.
Wow.
And it piqued an interest. And then so on my own, I studied philosophy. It's always an interest of mine. And then I'm like, well, I ended up studying for my tests and everything. And then I realized I'm learning more on the side because I'm learning this stuff and I'm studying all this other stuff on the side. I'm learning quicker on my own without all these kind of chores I got to do.
Right.
And so I just kept studying and reading, and one topic of interest led to another. And so I'm a big student of philosophy, history, things like that. And it's good to understand the history of thought of humankind. And that way you kind of get an update to what everybody's thought up to this point. And if not too much new has been thought, and then you get their understanding that, kind of everybody kind of goes through the same thing, and you get a broader picture of life and trying to understand everything. And so it just kind of provides a background, whereas somebody who only knows one kind of way of thinking might get stuck in that way of thinking and may not be open to the way the world is. And what I found is the more I learn, the less I know.
Yeah. The power of the mind is something else, right? Like, we all have when we're born, we all have the same thing going on, right? We all got to learn to walk. We all got to learn to eat. We all got to learn to breathe and do things safely, right?
A little bit of variations, different temperaments, right?
Right,
Psychology is always interesting. People react differently to the same stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
And then life experience kind of could tear you down or it can build you up. And it's
Right.
just a matter of at one point you learn that.
Yeah. You see people go through the exact same thing. One person's on the streets, one person's a successful millionaire, and has multiple businesses and doing well. And so you never know, but I believe the power of the mind is something that we'll probably never fully understand, how powerful it really is. But, you think about it and, you say, oh man, I haven't talked to John in a while. And next thing you know, John's calling you. Right. It happens all the time to people.
You manifest it.
Yes.
Yeah, some people believe that you can create your own reality. And so your thoughts dictate that. And you pretty much get what you think you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so a lot of people, they're like, well, I'm going to fake it till I make it and convince themselves they're more than they are, at least that they could be more than they are.
Yeah.
And then they work towards that. And little by little, they come closer to it.
Yeah.
Even, let's say I wanted to be a NBA basketball player. That's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But I could get better at basketball and a lot better and if I had fun with it, it'd be fun, right? So you can manifest a better version of yourself just by thinking the right way.
Yeah. 100%, man. And even this gym that we're sitting in right now, never thought it would happen. Never thought it would happen so soon. Literally, this has all just been a manifestation of things that I've thought of over the years, and they've kind of all just come into place at the right times, and it's really remarkable. But I feel like we're so I don't know, we don't think about those things all the time. We get distractions and life, and these damn cell phones that are in our hands all the times.
Yeah.
They kind of keep us away from things sometimes.
Some people think the imagination, that's the purpose of it. So if you can see it, that's the first step.
Yeah.
And then one day you're standing in that thing you were thinking about, and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
And so some people think that's the greater the imagination. You look at people like Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, we're going to Mars. I don't know how.
Yeah.
But you one step at a time, you don't got to see the goal. You just got to see a step in front of you.
Right.
And then you work towards it, and you're building up a wealth of knowledge and experience that can lead you to the point where you can finally be standing in that thing you imagined.
Yeah.
You hold it in reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And people can definitely overlook the journey along the way too, right? That journey is just crucial to our development, to how everything goes. You know, the hard times develop the good times, right? And
Well, that's the fun part, is getting there.
Yeah.
Once you get there, it's like, okay.
now what?
I think they did some studies with the satisfaction. They're really satisfied. If you have something that you're working towards every day, you're getting closer.
Yeah.
That's exciting. It's motivating. It's a good hit of dopamine, knowing you're getting closer and succeeding, even with setbacks. Because you're one day closer to what you imagined, what you wanted to create.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you get it, and you're like, oh, that's fun. And then they're like, now what?
Yeah.
And then you just got to picture something new. And then keep climbing the ladder in the same way.
Right.
And you can travel a long way doing that.
Well, I mean, like you brought up Elon Musk, not only does he have SpaceX, but he's got Tesla cars and Twitter and X or whatever it is.
He's
and,
sitting next to the president.
Yeah, you get bored doing something, right? Or you achieve so much doing that something, and then you want to keep achieving more.
There's two parts of our psyche, right? There's that part that says, "Hey, I want to do this," and then what's the other guy say? Nah, you can't do that.
Right.
It'd be too much work.
Yeah.
Other people can do that. There's that kind of dual nature of how we think.
Yeah.
The people that learn to control one or the other. Well, if you learn to control the override.
Yeah.
So, and then they go through the process. Hey, I want to do that. And then they say, nah, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And then you argue with it.
Sometimes those voices are not only in ourselves, but they're in other people too.
Yeah, that's the little bitch.
Yeah.
So everybody has a little bitch inside them and tries to talk you out of things.
Yeah.
If you want to know how that works, if you haven't done it before, take a hot shower, and then when you're done, crank that thing all the way to cold.
Yeah.
And then see how your mind tries to talk you out of it, turning it back to warm, and see if you can override that. It's actually a good exercise for people that maybe aren't mentally strong, is one of the side benefits is, well, you can override that bitch that's talking to you, telling you that you're not comfortable and to stop.
What's the magician's David Blaine, right?
He's a magician. Yeah.
Dude, he has done some crazy shit, but like I'm sure his mind is a lot of that, you know? Like he's almost died doing some of those stunts and different things that he's done.
Yeah, aside from his magic tricks, he does stunts and things like that. I always like that kind of stuff. And so it's impressive, see what the human body can do.
Right. Test it out. You know, I've always said the
human potential.
Right. The human body is very resilient too. Like, you hear people getting in these devastating car accidents and then popping back and living life, just fine. So there's a lot of different things with the human body, with the mind. And
Eastern practitioners of different faiths, they focus entirely on what the mind can do, and so you have them, have people that have surgery performed on themselves without anesthetic, and they don't feel it.
Right, it's something else.
Pretty wild.
Man. Yeah,
it's something to explore.
Yeah. And there's some people, they hurt their finger and they're going crazy. So there's both sides of the spectrum on extremes too.
Yeah, and they're not at the point where they know how to deal with it yet.
Yeah.
And some people never learn till later, and some people never learn. And I don't know if it's one and done or we get lots of chances, but they'll learn next time maybe.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. What's the best advice you could give to a beginning white belt walking into the gym? Maybe they've tried it out a couple times, but they're kind of struggling with, they don't know if jiu-jitsu's for them.
That's a tough one because you can tell people to keep going. It gets easier. You're getting stronger. You just got to deal with it. But if you kind of know give them a roadmap of what to expect. Mm-hmm. If you jump in there and they're like getting slaughtered every time, is this what it's always going to be like? I'm not getting any better, especially at blue belt. A lot of people are like, I'm not getting any better.
Yeah.
But if somebody's been down that road, you can give them directions. You can say, okay, you're going to get beat up for a year and a half. But then you're going to tread water,
Yeah.
And then when you're a blue belt, you might quit, but don't.
Yeah. Most people do.
Yeah, yeah. And so if you get through blue belt, you're cruising from there.
Yeah.
And so again, every day you're getting closer to getting better. And it's good when people have those breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Even if it's just one little thing, because you get addicted to progress.
Oh, yeah.
And one day you learn one little thing that you can use quite often.
Yes.
You're like, oh, I can escape that position now pretty easily now. Yeah, I just give them a roadmap.
Yeah.
Let them know what to expect. And then when you see the map, you kind of, okay, you take your first step. And when it comes along, it's not a shock when they're getting beat up for 6 months.
Yeah, sometimes longer.
Usually longer. I'm still getting beat up.
Yeah, me too.
You got to keep going up the ladder. And
yeah, I think I'm doing so great, and then I'll have Rich come over, and he just slaughters me, and I'm like, oh man, I thought I was close to the black belt,
Yeah. Then you try to get little tiny wins, like see if I can get them in half guard, or see if you can get a sweep on somebody that has been murdering you for a while.
Yeah,
and some people you'll never catch up to.
Yeah,
one of the guys that I really admired early on is Roy Dean.
Yeah,
and I liked his style, like his vibe.
Yeah,
he was an Aikido black belt.
I didn't know he did Aikido.
He did judo first, and then I think he did Aikido, and then another type of jiu-jitsu. He got black belts in all of them, and then he got a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And now he's like a 4-stripe black belt, something like that. And I always liked his vibe, and he kind of patterned. That's why I don't know if you've ever seen one of his classes, but he patterns the class in a traditional style. So there's bowing and really... kind of reverent to the art.
Right.
And I've always appreciated that.
Yeah.
And
jiu-jitsu is a little bit different when it comes to the formalities of martial arts, right?
Yeah, it's not a traditional art, and so it doesn't have that history of tradition that comes down from, say, Japan. Japan's such a... there's lots of rules, and there's just kind of things you don't do and things that you have to do. But there's always a reverence there for what they're doing and what they're practicing, and that kind of you don't see that as much, but you see some of the traditions and some of the schools that stay on there. I still kind of catch myself sometimes bowing on and off the mat.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's it has its own rituals. You get on the mat, you shake everybody's hand.
Yep. Fist bumps and stuff before the roll.
Yeah, and so it picked up a lot of Portuguese terminology from Brazil.
Yeah.
What once was Japanese art evolved eventually into judo, and then into something out of Brazil that got modified and brought some of its traditions with it. But no, it's some of the traditional stuff's in there. It's just its own culture.
Yeah, a lot of people I've seen when they first start out in jiu-jitsu, grabbing the gi and pulling on it, and the belt comes off in jiu-jitsu. No matter how you want to look at it, you could tie your belt a million different ways. It comes off in jiu-jitsu when you're rolling good.
Yeah.
And then you get a pile of belts over in the corner. That you just kind of toss it to the side and keep going. But
the gi's off by the end.
Right. So I mean, it is a little bit different with the formalities and stuff, especially like, you compare it to Aikido or something like that. And, some of the more traditional martial arts that are out there, and, it's a little bit different, but, I think that one of the things I love most about jiu-jitsu is that factor. I don't know the katas, and if jiu-jitsu had a kata, I wouldn't do it.
You learn everything in English, and that sounds practical and it makes sense for people that are learning. Doing traditional martial arts, I had to learn everything in Japanese. Yes. And then I'm like, what am I doing? What's that called?
That's funny because
if you go to another school, you don't learn the Japanese.
No,
they're gonna do it in Japanese.
Yeah.
But jiu-jitsu, everything's in English.
It's part of the curriculum is learning the language, right?
It's just part of it, yeah, because you want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
But everything, it just seems jiu-jitsu is such a practical art, learning everything in English,
Yeah.
Just seems part of it. But I think if anything, we would have had to learn it in Portuguese.
Yeah.
And we'd all be speaking Portuguese. That's handy at a match, when the coach speaks Portuguese to the competitor and the other coach doesn't know what they're telling them to do.
The crazy thing, though, is after a while, if you're around jiu-jitsu long enough, you just start to pick up a little bit of Portuguese here and there. So, like, when they're saying things, go to the mount or whatever in Portuguese, you can kind of pick it up.
If you hear it over and over, sure.
Right, yeah. So it's funny, though, we brought up the language. In the Aikido book that they have here, they have like 4 pages of like the Japanese terminology that you have to learn. And I was like, man, if I didn't sign up for martial arts to learn a language, I have a hard time with English. But
yeah, actually, the dojo here, they didn't emphasize that for a while. I think when I started teaching, I'm like, you guys got to at least learn this stuff in case you go to another dojo.
Yeah.
And so we're going to start learning all the terminology, make sure you guys know. It's in a traditional art, if you want to not isolate yourself to, one school, you want to go learn from others, then you'll at least have to know the terminology.
Right.
And so you pick it up, though. Judo does it, too. Nobody complains about that. You're learning everything in Japanese.
Right.
Yeah.
The importance of cross training, right? It's very crucial in your development in any martial art, right? You gotta drink from a different well or something like that, right?
So here's one of the people look at Aikido, kind of laugh at it sometimes, and a lot of times it's because Aikido, and to go back to that, is meant to be a finishing school for the martial artist. And so if this is the only art you've ever picked up, it'll look pretty, right? But the founder of Aikido was very versed in several forms of jiu-jitsu. He learned several weapons, including the sword, for years and years. And then he finally picked up a type of jiu-jitsu called Daito-Ru Aiki Jiu-Jitsu from a teacher that really influenced him. And those techniques eventually got modified in what he formed Aikido with. And so he did demonstrations, and even Kojiro Kano, who was the founder of Judo, he was very impressed with him. He sent his students to train with the founder of Aikido, and so there's a lot of respect. He was a respected martial artist.
Wow.
And, he was a veteran. He saw violence. He knew how to take care of people with violence. And then in his older age, he's like, I don't like all this violence, and he softened it up. He took the techniques, and then he formed it into Aikido. But he had that background first.
Yeah.
And so you can, like one of my other teachers told me, you can learn the pretty stuff, the stuff that looks graceful and good for a demonstration, right? The refined
Techniques,
stuff, the soft stuff.
Yeah.
You can learn that and look good, but you when you learn the hard stuff first, the way violence really works, reality,
Yeah.
then you can make it softer. You can make it more graceful.
Yeah.
But there's something lacking there if that's all you've ever tried is kind of the dance form that people see of Aikido. It doesn't work the other way.
Right.
And so I would encourage anyone who's training something like a traditional martial art, including Aikido, to cross-train in something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. One of the things that attracted me to Aikido is the philosophy.
Yeah.
And I put it in the realm of an idealist martial art. And I put Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in kind of more of a realist category.
Yeah.
So when you train Aikido and it's all you've ever trained and you're told that it's good for self-defense, it's like, okay, go try to defend against this jiu-jitsu, high school wrestler or a jiu-jitsu guy who's literally trying to simulate your death.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're like, oh, you find out real quick. And then if you want to, now if you train just for the exercise or for the
health benefits
health benefits, whatever, you could do the same thing with yoga. You do yoga, you're going to get increased flexibility.
Yeah.
You're going to get increased strength. And
100%.
Can that help your that help you in your jiu-jitsu?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, it can. Yeah. Can a bodybuilder, does he have any advantages? Certain type of strength that he gains. He gets bigger, heavier. Can that help your jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
In a way, sure, yeah. Just like when practicing that blending of energies can help you in jiu-jitsu, and you find those little moments where you can sweep somebody.
Yeah.
And when you're cross-trained, you're now you're trying to make it work against somebody who's really trying to, take your head off.
Yeah.
And so there's, that great benefit to cross-training.
Yeah.
And the people that are best at Aikido, I don't see these arts as like separate. I just see it all as like your martial art training.
Yeah, yeah.
But some people want to kind of stay in that category and they never want to learn more beyond it, which is fine. But if you want to delve into the realist category, you're going to have to take off that black belt and that other traditional art and put on a white belt, and it can be quite humbling.
Yeah, it can be.
But like I said, the people that are best at Aikido are the best that have that background of something functional.
Yeah,
they understand the violence, right? And Aikido is often called the art of peace. And the people that trained back in the day, they were fully versed in all the violence and all the hard arts and everything. And so they understand peace better than somebody that's known only peace.
Right.
Because the people that understand true peace are the people that have a contrast, that have been to war before.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. You look at even guys like Bruce Lee, right? I've always, if you grew up in, in this generation, Bruce Lee was huge, and he traveled all around the world to add different martial arts to his style, right? He was learning from everybody, but you're 100% on what you were saying as far as like you got to know that there's another side to this. If you only go in thinking that
if you're training for martial purposes,
right,
or even to defend yourself,
and there's other things that are a part of your martial art. Like you said, you like to call it just your martial arts training, right? It's not separate arts or anything like that. And one of my mentors, Steve Heath, he does archery, and he calls that a martial art. And he's like, my weapons, my weapons training. I got my martial arts. I got my shooting with my gun. That's a martial art in itself. Disarming. You think about all those different factors.
It's your sword,
and then even knife training, or stick training or whatever it is. All of those are martial arts, and you do need to know some sort of form of them. If you're trying to jiu-jitsu up a guy that has a gun, it's not going to work out very well. And multiple different factors. They don't even got to be close to you. So that's kind of the different thing about it, and it's a different way of looking at it.
I think a lot of people they do an art for years and years, and they get that they get into the routine, they start to rise up the ranks.
Yeah.
They start to get respected. Maybe they get a teaching position, and people are like, oh, you're very good at that art. And then you get emotionally attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody else comes along, say, you probably should learn some stuff on the ground.
Yeah.
And then you get emotionally attached to that whole experience you had. And then you're like, well, you're not comfortable in that position anymore. And it's just that ego that kind of keeps them there too. That's part of it sometimes.
Right.
And it's just like, I've been doing this for years. When am I going to learn something new,
Yeah.
But that's,
a lot of people think that
happens.
they hit a certain age and they can't learn anything new. I've heard that before from veterans in the game. They're like, "Oh, I'm too old to learn a new art, or I'm too old to be doing that, or
teaching
or whatever
grandpa
it
to
is."
send a text message."
Yeah.
I don't need that stuff.
My parents are like that, man. I'm like, "Hey, just text me." I don't know how to do all that. I can't learn that phone stuff. I'm like, "Well, Dad, it's not going away." Yeah,
it's different. Heck, man, we grew up. I think even you grew up before the internet.
Yeah.
So now we tell kids, that we didn't have it. What?
Yeah.
The heck
it's
did
wild
you do?
to think about.
We didn't have phones. If you want to get a hold of somebody, you had to wait till they got home. And that's
Pagers started getting popular when I was a kid. I remember my parents bought me a pager so they could tell me when it was time to go home. And nowadays, a kid wouldn't know what a pager was. Like they'd be like, "What? How do you communicate on that thing?" There was little codes, you sent to the pager, and you flip it upside down and it said "help."
Work wants you to come in. They could just reach you because you got your phone all the time.
Yeah.
Or as opposed, I didn't have my answering machine on.
Yeah.
It broke.
They had those little tapes you had to put in the answering machine.
I don't think I've ever set up my voicemail, so nobody can get a hold of me if I don't want them to. Yeah.
Oh man, I remember we'd always get home from church or something like that. My parents' first thing they'd do is play the answer machine, right, and find out who they needed to call back.
Yep. Nobody can get a hold of you. It's kind of nice though. Now people are like giving their kids phones so they can get a hold of them,
right?
Even though they don't let them go anywhere.
Yeah,
we used to be out all day long. Street lights came on, we had to be home.
Time to go. Yeah, it's definitely a different time period, but. Same thing. Like you got to look at the philosophies of it. There's a lot of different things in life. A lot of people grew up without cell phones. You think of a lot of generations before us. We weren't, the only ones. And they were able to communicate. They'd send horses across the country.
And I think bringing it back to the martial training, it's just refusal to kind of learn something new where it would benefit you if you learned it.
Yeah.
Just don't be so. Don't get too attached to who you are, and kind of try to see how much better you can be, and more efficient you can be.
Test it out, right?
Yeah. So don't get stuck thinking you don't have to learn that because that's not my art,
right?
But would it help you if you learned boxing? Yeah, probably could help you. Would it help you if you learned wrestling? Of course, you gain something from all those things.
Yeah.
But a lot of times these martial arts, like Aikido, I love doing it. It's fun. I love the history and the tradition and the practice. But you're practicing essentially one principle, and you turn it into a martial art, whereas it is useful, but it's not everything.
Yeah.
They even modify the training so that your uke is constantly giving you that opportunity to blend with that energy, where in reality it's just like little tiny windows that pop up, but it's helpful,
right?
But it might be a gateway to something functional, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like it was.
Martial arts are like languages in a sense, right?
Yeah, you don't gotta speak the same language to do it, but when you're doing it, you are speaking the same language as you're learning the same thing.
Yeah, and not only that is like, you try out a different martial art, it's like learning a different language, and you got to be able to use it and communicate with it, right?
And it's awkward, but if you're not struggling, you're probably not growing.
Yeah.
And people get, that's where that ego comes in. Oh, this is easy for me, but they're never progressing.
Right.
Even in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like I said, you're doing the same stuff all the time.
Right.
People are going to get wise to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. It's a unique thing, man, and I like your approach to everything, and I've had a great time talking to you, man, along the way, and I've learned a little bit by talking to you in this podcast, and you know, like I said, I've never trained in other martial arts, but I've been around them, and I've definitely seen that, you know, jiu-jitsu is an important one, but there's also good things in many others. And, you know,
they have a great history that interweave with one another, and they're all kind of tied together.
Yeah.
Aikido is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Their judo is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu goes all the way back to Japan, possibly back to India for who knows how long, you know.
Yeah.
And so
India,
we're a part of that. Yeah, there's some.
Oh, you're dropping knowledge on me here.
Goes even past Japan, you know.
Yeah.
And eventually it evolves into what it is today. And it's not that it gets better, it just evolves to the time and the culture in which we're in. It kind of molds into it.
Yeah.
And if the culture changes, they'll value different things.
Yeah.
That's how the samurai, they were the martial artists, right? And they were valuable. People hired them to do their dirty work.
Yeah.
And then the war was over, and then there's no more feudal system, and they're like, well, what are we going to do now? And so they were doing jiu-jitsu, and then that grew out of style.
Yeah.
And then only the gangsters did the jiu-jitsu, and so you have a cultural change there. It evolved from there to, somebody said, well, maybe we can use it for competition or something like that. And then the Kano turned it into judo.
Yeah.
And then one of his students ended up in Brazil for some reason, and the Gracies helped him out. He's like, hey, let me teach you this Kano jiu-jitsu. It was like, oh, okay. They called it Kano jiu-jitsu. And then... they started doing that, and one of the brothers wanted to do it, but he was kind of weak and
he used to
couldn't do
pass
it as
out.
well.
He used to pass out randomly. They said
Same with the founder of Aikido. He was weak, and he saw his father.
Sensei, right?
Yeah, he saw Morehe Ueshiba, and they call him O-sensei. And he saw his father get attacked, and then from that day he said, I don't think it's good to be weak.
Yeah.
And so he started learning all these different types of jiu-jitsus. But so similar story to Helio. And then, then it evolved from there. And then the brother tweaked what he learned from Kano's student, you know? And now here we are, came to California and it's blowing up all over the world.
Oh, it's wild. And I think we're at the peak of, maybe not even the peak, but we're at a really fun point in jiu-jitsu to where it's really catching a lot of steam in the United States. I think Stockton alone, we got a ton of schools here, you know.
It's got lots of room to grow too.
Right.
I've been in the Midwest and California. There's a jiu-jitsu place on every corner, you know, and then you go other places. They're few and far between.
Yeah.
And so it's got plenty of room to grow and spread, and lots of schools that can be open still.
Yeah. I get to travel around occasionally for work, and I always try to look up a place on the road to at least get some cross training in, right?
Yeah.
I may learn a technique that I've never seen before. I may roll with somebody that gives me a different look, whatever it is. But sometimes you go to those rural South areas and you're trying to find a place. There ain't none around.
Nothing out there. Yeah, I was in Oklahoma, and there's only one gym, luckily, in the town we were in. I checked it out, and I walked in as a purple. It was like, ooh, purple belt.
Yeah.
Because, it was the gym's only been around a year or two, and there's a bunch of white belts and a couple blue belts.
Yeah.
And so, it's an interesting perspective.
I recently
lots of room to grow.
I got to train out in Alabama recently, and it was a good experience. Like, it was a really good experience. There was only like 2 places within the area, and the company I was at and working with, they one of the guys trained at this jiu-jitsu spot, and me and him were really kicking it off, talking about jiu-jitsu. And I was like, hey, Isaac, I was like, I brought my gi, I brought my belt and everything. Like, I want to go train. And I didn't know, you go to Alabama, you don't know what kind of jiu-jitsu you're going to get. I don't know how many Gracies are out in Alabama, but
make sure you're in the right neighborhood.
Yeah. But it was a good experience, and I always try to take something. I've been to Indianapolis and trained out there with some high-level guys, and I still talk to these guys occasionally, from time to time, and got to see them move up the ranks and different things like that. And man, it's amazing, dude. It's a language, and if you speak the same language, you can go in there and really get a lot out of it. And
doesn't matter if you work at McDonald's or if you're a lawyer or a doctor.
Yeah.
You get on the mat, everyone's the same.
Yeah, everyone's the same.
Yeah. You roll with people for a long time, I don't even know what they do, and then I'm like, oh, I didn't know you did that.
Yeah. But man, Edgar, it's been awesome having you on this
thank you.
episode. And like I said, just talking to someone with your kind of knowledge, man, it gives you a different perspective on life. You've never let anything get you down, and every time I see you, man, you got an awesome attitude. You're always training and doing good in there. So keep up what you're doing, man, and keep seeking the knowledge. That's what it's about. The more knowledge we can seek, the more educated we're going to be.
Yeah, and if you're struggling with something, I struggle with my stuff too, but okay, deal with it, and then the next day move on.
Yeah,
you get past it, grow, go train.
Yeah,
training is you pull a lot of metaphors out of the training. You can learn a lot if you make an intention to.
Yeah.
If you go in just to do physical movements and exercise, you don't think about it that hard, but a lot of lessons that can be pulled from training and jiu-jitsu that you can't get from other things.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I'm just going to give you a couple minutes to shout out anybody you'd like to. The floor is absolutely yours.
Oh, I gotta. If you guys are listening, come train with us at Stockton Jiu-Jitsu Academy. Yeah. Gotta love everybody there. Rich has always been good to me there. Beats me up when he has to, and I always try to learn something from him and everybody. I don't know. It's just everybody at the gym.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to us.
Yeah.
If you made it to the end.
Yeah. Also, don't forget to vote for Guest of the Year. His coach, Rich Flores, is definitely on the list. We've narrowed it down to the top 3 downloaded podcasts on Grapplers Talk. So go out on our Instagram page. We have a post. We also have a poll on our story as well. I'm going to add all the votes. I don't care if you voted twice or if you got multiple Instagram accounts. I'm just adding them all. I'm looking at them blank. I don't have time to research how many accounts you have and how many people voted. But I'm going to go based on whatever numbers I see. So
the fix is in.
Yeah, the fix is in. If you start creating accounts, we'll know.
You make the effort.
We'll know for sure. But thank you, everyone, for listening, downloading the podcast. Don't forget to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Facebook, Instagram. We're all over the place. But we thank you for your continued support. Thank you for subscribing. Go check out the Handsome Blind Guy, and give him some support, man. He's an awesome guy, and I've been just thrilled to have you on. Once again, this is Dave with Grapplers Talk, and we are out.
This is Grapplers Talk.